And it took a long time to do the Ibogaine, much longer than we thought. It took like 4 or 5 years just to get patents. But once Howard had patents, he was the patent holder with an invention, which gave him a different status with the government. They had to deal with him, even though they didn't want to deal with anybody from the pot movement. They somehow had to deal with the guy who had the Ibogaine patents. And this is before Bush got in. When Bush got in, Bush and what was the name of the vice president under Bush? Quayle. They owned Prozac. Quayle's from Indianapolis, where Prozac is from. So they were into drugs. So it was suddenly possible to go to them and talk, about drugs that might have an impact on the spread of the AIDS epidemic. But here is Reagan and Nancy with Helmut Kohl and his wife at the SS cemetery for, SS Nazi Waffen-SS guys who were buried there. And this did not go well for Reagan. He got enormous criticism from the Jewish community for honoring it wasn't just like Wehrmacht, it was SS. The guys that killed millions of Jews, just shot them in ditches in Russia. And they're commemorating them. Now, I got a lot of my information from Hans-Georg Baer. This is Hans-Georg Baer. And he was the one who told me stuff about Stalin. He was the one who told me what it was really like to be a kid in Nazi Germany. But he was always very, very upset with Jack because he considered that Jack had plagiarized his book. But I would not have we probably should have done the book ourselves. I'm sorry about that. And we probably should have put it out as George's book. But Jack got his hands on it, and it was probably also for the good that more versions of the same information got out. And what Jack really did was to be a great salesman. He went out on the road and he talked to a lot of people. He was very dynamic and very charismatic. And George, on the other hand, finally, Jack was always against Ibogaine. George sent 2 people for Ibogaine treatment, didn't come himself, didn't watch them. And when the people from New York fell asleep because of jet lag, the woman went into the bathroom and smoked heroin while she was on Ibogaine. And that caused her to seize up and die because you can't do other drugs with Ibogaine. So anyway, in 1988-89, Kurt Schmoke came out and said, since he was an ex-federal prosecutor and he was the mayor of Baltimore, it had a lot of influence, but he said that drugs should be legalized. He was talking about all drugs. And this is about the time the Drug Policy Foundation is forming in 1986. Actually, probably it was the other way around. They formed the foundation and then they recruited Schmoke to say this stuff. But it led to a huge national debate about legalizing drugs. And it wasn't about pot. It was about outright legalization of drugs. And it meant there was people arguing that cocaine should be legal. So anyway, this is what kind of happened.
I'm Ted Koppel reporting tonight from New York, and we are continuing our national town meeting on the legalization of drugs.
Yeah, the first thing to do is to make marijuana legally available and fairly readily available. Like alcohol or tobacco, but there's stricter controls. We know right now that 60 million Americans in this country have smoked marijuana. Between 20 and 30 million are smoking it right now. We have 0 overdose deaths. We know that the vast majority of people who smoke marijuana have not gone on to harder drugs. Last week, the administrative judge and the DEA asked whether or not marijuana should be made legally available for medical purposes to deal with chemotherapy. The DEA judge said they compared...
Okay, that guy right there was Jerome Jaffe.
He said that marijuana...
Jerry Jaffe is the guy who introduced methadone.
psychoactive substances ever known to man. Very simply.
That time Jesse Jackson was very anti-pot. All these guys have mellowed out, like, you know.
Let's rewrite that the drugs that have to be addressed now are cocaine and heroin and crack. And when we've addressed those, even though most of us believe that marijuana
they were not actually interested in
not to be legalized, that's the last one on this tape. The exact quote from the federal judge was
the
safest
shirt says Ron sells crack.
active substance known to mankind. That means safer than caffeine, safer than aspirin. That means you're putting people in jail for basically doing something that's completely harmless.
Let me turn to
How can you talk about locking people up in work camps? How can you talk about taking people all the way from London, 15 people in New York City?
All right.
Why do you want
Just one
to?
second.
How can you justify?
I may have made a...
How can you justify a situation where you eliminated pot, but crack and heroin are 4 times more available, 4 times cheaper
That's
than
what I'm
the
saying.
beginning of the rate of war?
That's what I'm saying.
All you've done is design
Yes.
a system that gets rid of marijuana.
I think...
Leaving our drugs. That's all you've done.
And of course, what happened was I walked up to Chair Jaffe and said, "What about Ibogaine?" And he had rigged an experiment where he shot the Ibogaine right under the skin of mice or rats, which is the one way it doesn't work. So anyway, a year later, we finally got a big story in the Village Voice, and I gave a copy of the story to Nelson Mandela.
Of the African National Front.
And today, South Africa is a powerhouse for Ibogaine. It's become really established there. But they were actually already ready to shoot me down. If I'd followed up with a question, I've always asked myself, why didn't you ask a question? Well, because I didn't know that they were all ready to shoot me down because they had a faked out experiment. And this is the guy that was drug czar after, they had Herb Kleber's deputy drug czar. This is Bill Bennett. And what's significant with Bill Bennett is that they pass a law, actually a codicil, to the Single Convention, which mandates that every single use of cannabis anywhere in the world has to be treated as a crime. That you can't have some kind of decrim for users. They have to be criminals under the U.S. law. And this is very unenforceable, but it gives you an idea where they were coming from, because right at this point, because of AIDS, about 300 people had applied to be part of the same program that LV Musica is still in. There's still a few people who get the, federally government supplied marijuana. And people found out that it stops AIDS wasting and applied. But they told them, well, you just think it's stopping, AIDS wasting because it's giving you the munchies. It's all in your head. No. Marijuana stops inflammation. That's the reason it stops rheumatism. And AIDS kills through inflamed gut, which means you have no appetite. And when you lose about 25% of your body weight, you fall over dead. So it took 20 years to prove that in monkeys because they suppress research. Now, right now, they're still supplying Africa under a program that George W. Bush started with AIDS drugs, with retrovirals for millions of people. But I suspect that, that money is going to run out. And when that happens, people are going to need to be able to have just some pot plants in the corner of their yard so they can stay alive. And those countries are run by very, very reactionary governments on drugs. I was just in the Philippines. The Philippines, they're shooting people, mostly for crystal meth. Just shooting people, not even giving them a trial. because they're trying to encourage the others to go into big rehabs that don't work. Would you voluntarily lock yourself up in prison? That's what they have people doing. They have people locking themselves up in human warehouse situations, because the alternative is to be out in the street and get killed. And they killed 9,000 people, and the system is complicit in that. But the thing with AIDS led to the change of the current. It led to a complete change of the country. And this is Proposition 215, and that's Dennis Perone and Brownie Mary. And 56% of people voted for legal marijuana, mostly spurred by AIDS. And instead of ordering a crackdown, Bill Clinton sent it to the Institutes of Medicine, and they came back with a report saying, yes, it is medically useful. And that was the beginning of the unraveling of marijuana prohibition right there. Because once some medical authorities said something, the jig was up. But it didn't happen overnight. The thing is that there was a Ibogaine program at the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Because of the crack epidemic, they said, we need something for crack. We have heroin, we have methadone for heroin, but we have nothing for crack. We have nothing for meth. And they were going to go ahead, but Howard had formed a partnership with a woman named Deborah Mash, who I'll show you in a minute. And Deborah Mash was doing the bidding of Clinton. Clinton did not want to associate with peace, pot, and prosperity, or acid, amnesty, and abortion, because he was traumatized in 1972 by the overwhelming victory of Richard Nixon against George McGovern. So he decided he would put the Democratic Party on the reactionary side, and they abandoned development of Ibogaine after they got partway through the safety trial. They got up to 2 milligrams per kilogram. No actual medical cure for crack, but they sent tens of thousands of black kids to federal prison for really small amounts of crack. Now, does that make sense economically? It's really expensive to put people in prison. Why would you turn down having a pill? Well, they finally came out and said, after talking to us and not really telling us this for 4 years while we negotiated with them, oh yeah, we can't have hallucinations. You're going to have to find a non-hallucinogenic form of Ibogaine. And so if they'd had a little more information, they might not have decided to discontinue the trial, but the dispute between Howard and Deborah Mash scotched that. Now, you got to understand that at the same time in New York, they got rid of David Dinkins and they elected this guy. And this guy here decided he would ban the actual pot parade. And in 1996, they had a lot of people who came early to the place where the pot parade ended and started drinking large amounts of 40s and smashing glass on the fountain of the Washington Square Park. And then apparently somebody damaged a tree when we didn't totally clean up right. So they got the grounds they needed. The next year they completely banned the march. They made it stop at Madison Square Garden and come nowhere close to Washington Square. They had a family day, which was some locals that were Giuliani supporters. They didn't have a whole lot of support, but they said, you can't have marijuana around kids. And that was it. We declared Family Day, therefore you can't have something you've been having here for 26 years. Well, we went through the internet and called for the Million Marijuana March. And in 1998, we called for it. We got a place, meanwhile, in Battery Park, under the gaze of the Statue of Liberty. And the next year, we had the march in 30 cities around the globe. Then we went to 90 cities, then 190 cities, then finally 300 cities. We went through the Millennium Marijuana March, the 2001 Space Odyssey, the Liberation Day, the Global Marijuana March, and the Worldwide Marijuana March. So all of these are trademarks of an event spawned by Rudolph Giuliani. And we were able to have more people in London than you could possibly leave for a few years. And we were able to say, how come they have more freedom under the Queen of England than we do in America under the Bill of Rights? Perhaps because Rudolph Giuliani rhymes with Adolf Mussolini. Or maybe it's just, things are really screwed up. But he did manage to really, really insult Osama bin Laden. This guy went out of his way to insult Osama bin Laden. And I might point out that the mayoral bunker was in the basement of the World Trade Center, and he narrowly got out with his life. Anyway, this is Howard Lotsof. And Howard Lotsof had the patent, and, what happened was, every time you take Ibogaine, it goes into your liver turns it into this hydroxyl. From a methoxy, the liver wants to get rid of that methoxy. Just like methyl alcohol is poison, and ethyl alcohol is the stuff you're supposed to drink. You're not supposed to drink that wood alcohol, right? So anytime there's a methyl, your body wants to get rid of it. So every time you take Ibogaine, it turns into noribogaine. But what happened was, she patented it. This is Deborah Mahesh. How can you do that? She controlled the patent court in Miami because her husband was the head of the Dade County Democratic Party. And I'm standing next to the convention handing out lit in 1996 at the Democratic Convention where, Bill Clinton totally trounced Bob Dole in that election. So it was never was even close. I don't know what they're upset about, but he came out and said, please don't do this. The Republicans are going to say that the Democrats are trying to give your kids LSD. So they really, really were uptight about this thing about a hallucinogen. They never were really straight with us. But what happened was she came out and patented noribogaine, which is Ibogaine, just is plain old Ibogaine after it's gone through your body one time. And the DEA did not schedule that. Then another guy named Stanley Glick invented a synthetic Ibogaine called 18MC, and they didn't schedule that either. So much for the fucking Analogs Act. So the only other thing you need to know about Deborah Mash is that when Bush narrowly won the vote in the first 48 hours, when he narrowly won the vote in 2000, right, it was like a difference of 500 votes or something. She got on national television, not in a lab coat, but in a pantsuit, as the most articulate person the Democrats could find. So she is not really a scientist. She's really a politician. And she said that George Bush is stealing the election. But Jesse Jackson brought people to Palm Beach to protest, and Roger Stone got all these Republicans in Brooks Brothers suits to have the Brooks Brothers riot to disperse them. And, they, naturally Gore fucked up the legal case, and instead of asking for a total recount of the entire state, asked for just like, three counties, and then why they got three, districts or whatever. While they got that straightened out, more time went by, and Thanksgiving came, and they had to stop counting, and then they got to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court stopped the count. Well, we learned later that we actually won, but it wasn't official, and it was too late. Now, these guys here, right, I just got to tell you, despite having a liberal reputation now with Trump, and this guy on the right has tried to clean up his reputation a bit by denouncing Trump, this is what they gave the pot movement the entire time, okay? The finger, okay? And I got a great video I can't play right now, but maybe I'll play it a little later, called Death Penalty for Pot, which is me and Aaron. And it's not our voices, but, it's our images. And if you smoke pot, you will be shot right on the spot. Anyway, under Clinton, it started under Clinton. See, all this fucking bad stuff started under Clinton. I'll give that we have a few people in the room that support Trump. But you see, the thing is, I just want to be accurate about the bad stuff Clinton did. Because they did enough bad stuff, They did genuinely bad stuff without, totally blowing your credibility by saying they killed Vince Foster or something, Let's just be accurate. There was no fucking child molesting ring in the Pizzagate basement. There's just stuff that's inaccurate. It makes you look bad when you get stuff. Look, right now, I got a problem with Wikipedia. They have totally bogus information, which they will not change, on the Ibogaine page, right? And all I'm saying is don't put in stuff that is demonstrably untrue, because it ruins your brand. Okay, anyway, so what happened was they had all these cases that they brought up. My friend A.J. Weberman was busted for having money in the bank in Luxembourg and went to jail for a year because the ex-editor-in-chief of High Times, Bob Singer, is getting out of jail. He took over Tom Forsad's dealing operation, which they never should have given a guy who wasn't a pot dealer anything. But they said, Beal is too known and too controversial, and he frightened these people. They couldn't even talk to me. And of course, what he did was he didn't know how to do business, and he ended up getting stuff where he would have to sell it for cash for too high of a price. Now, the whole way the business works is in fronting, right? And so if you can't front, then you end up selling to narcs. Right? You're much more likely to sell to narcs, especially if it's too expensive. I had another friend who got held down at gunpoint because he had given back the hash, and they killed him. And I told him when he had this hash, I said, Charlie, the only people who are going to buy this stuff are either the narcs or the Rips are going to come. And the Rips came, and they killed him. And Abbie Hoffman, the same thing happened to him, right? He had this 3 kilos of coke, except that it was all lidocaine, which he got from his brother, who had a medical products company in Mexico. So it was like 9 actual ounces of coke and 3 kilos of lidocaine. And nobody's going to buy this. Do you understand what I'm saying? Nobody's going to buy this. So I guess the moral of the story is only deal good pot, right? And you are all free to give me really, really good pot. So, of course. Anyway, what happened was, because they spent all this stuff, this thing about, Bob Singer is amazing. The second time he gets out of prison, he's already done 4 or 5 years. AJ's paid for his kid to be in a special school and stuff. He's getting out, and they say, we got to talk to you. And then they throw this old address book on the thing. We want all the people in this address book, or you are not getting out, because we found that you were busted and gave a false name, but it's your ID, it's your fingerprints. So we got a third charge on you, and you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life unless you... He got people to come back from the dead. People who had faked their death in a boating accident. He got people to come back from fucking India. He got all these people. They arrested 40 people based on this guy's ratting everybody out. I'm not going to say beware of people who work for High Times, but High Times has moved to Los Angeles. Be careful. Be very careful. Anyway, the point is they weren't actually going after terrorists. And when the Democrats were leaving power, they said the biggest problem we have is terrorism. And they say, oh yeah, right. And Gore was really good at it. He got every single terrorist. He got the guy came in through Vancouver, the guy who landed in L.A. They found him because he was really on the job. Well, Bush had the actual warning on his desk saying we're going to be attacked and they're going to hit the World Trade Center, and he didn't read it. He didn't read it because he had a fallback. He was more interested in his fallback, which was to invade Iraq, because he was pissed off that this Hussein guy tried to kill his father. So I wake up in the morning, and Bernie Goetz, who later became a big pot guy, wants to come on our radio show. And we're talking about jump day. The yippies are going to have jump day because we think that the stock market is going to crash. There'd been the dot-com bubble, and we're thinking there's going to be a general stock market crash like there was in 1987 when we went out with a banner that said jump on Wall Street. And of course, nobody actually did jump. But we said there's going to be a jump day, but we have to postpone it. And then the first plane hit, and we started talking about it. The guy starts bouncing up and down in the engineer's chair because you can see a monitor showing this, and we can't see it. But they start telling people not to come downtown because there's an emergency here. We go to live broadcast, and we get connected to all the other stations of the Pacifica network, except for one, which was the dissident station in Berkeley, KPFA. They had Amy Goodman on. And Amy Goodman was actually a tape. She wasn't even doing a broadcast about what was happening. But now, in the official history, the broadcast that I was on never happened. And I was the first person. What happened was I said, okay, especially when they did the second thing and it became clear this is a conspiracy, this is not an accident. I mean, I don't know why people were talking about Cessnas. It was from the outline on the side of the building, it was really clear it was a jet. But I said, this only makes sense if you're sitting in the shoes of Osama bin Laden, because last night, or 2 days ago, they blew up the head of the Northern Alliance, and they're obviously trying to forestall the United States invading Afghanistan. And I identified correctly Al-Qaeda 25 minutes before the White House announced that it was Al-Qaeda. So what happened was that we actually had somebody who lived with us worked for somebody else who worked for WBAI down in front of the World Trade Center, broadcasting live, and he had to go through the number 9 telephone, the Yippie Museum telephone, because we could call them and he could call them, but he couldn't call us at the radio station because everything was already screwed up. I mean, I was like looking out, right, and it was bright blue, and then a few pieces of paper came by from the actual World Trade, and then everything got totally dark, and then Eric said, "I got to run," because it started coming down. He ran like a bat out of hell, and didn't have the thing fall on him. And Giuliani down in the basement has the police shooting out the panels of the fucking doors. They almost got Giuliani. They almost got him. And he provoked the whole thing with his insult against Osama bin Laden. But of course, we didn't have a chance to talk about Iraq because the guy took me off the air, and that was actually pretty important. Because look what happens here. This is what actually happened because of had nothing to do with the. He had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with the attack. As soon as you got rid of him, you still got ISIS. The minute you got rid of Hussein, you got ISIS. So at this point, you know, I would play the other video, but I can't. So I'm just going to go on to this picture here, which shows that these guys are really part of the same social scene. And this is one of the reasons people thought it didn't really matter if, like, Hillary gets in or Trump gets in, because they're all part of the same social scene. Chelsea is friends with Ivanka. They're speaking up on behalf of Malia. Right now, this is happening. And, you know, you can see in the social scene here, it won't matter if Trump gets in. Well, you know, we went through a lot of really bad stuff under those 8 years. Mark from Vancouver had to go to federal prison for seeds. 5 years. I got busted because a snitch out in Colorado ratted out my friend, but then he just had to tell him about me and my scene too. So in early 2008, maybe it was February. No, it was March. They got a couple people with a big load, and then after that we were just really, really hot. And they had a phone tap we didn't know about. So I'm cruising along in Illinois, and we stop, and the person that is like, she's got like she has to bring her elderly mom everywhere. Her mom pisses on the bed, and the guy was driver didn't want to sleep at piss, so he got upset naturally because he was tired. So this woman, Carlotta, just goes into the Steak and Shake bathroom and barricades herself in the bathroom until the cops come. And a story gets into the papers, you know, that I was involved in money laundering. And that was just, you know, they were making up charges, and it was dismissed 2 days later. But it got in the paper, and then it made it a little hard to do the deal regarding the building because I had to give the guy a bunch of cash. So if we just waited, we'd been cool, we didn't know that Obama is about to win the election and everything's going to change. And this is what happened. This is 3 days before inauguration. And we are in front of Covington and Burley, which is the legal office where Eric Holder worked as a private citizen before.
Martin Rich! Ladies first.
Thank you.
This guy isn't big enough. Pardon. This is big.
So we were trying to put some pressure on this guy. For one thing, I've been busted, and I wanted to like prove that I was a political activist and not like just a hot.
Pardon.
And this really proved it because this actually affected the prosecutor in Illinois.
Oliver North. Scott free.
This is very
Jack Bauer.
Scott free.
That this movement broke out in Colorado right at the same time to open up dispensaries for which there was nothing on the books authorizing.
Go to it. Pick something up.
And they just did it and got away with it. So Obama coming in set off the revolution because he was not willing to use the bully pulpit of the White House.
That's the first time I've seen these.
To
Peter McWilliams.
stop states from legalizing. When we tried to do it in 1985 in Oregon, they brought in Nancy Reagan. They brought in like the vice president, George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush. right? And they campaigned against it before it leaving the White House. Obama just wouldn't do that. He allowed it to happen.
Medical marijuana now! Medical marijuana now!
And the problem is, they weren't really willing to give
I'm here with Americans for Safe Access, which is a medical cannabis patient advocacy group. My chapter's in Silver Spring, Maryland, and we help patients have a safe and secure place to discuss their medical marijuana needs and to help them convince their doctors to give them letters of recommendation for marijuana.
My name is Dana Beal, and I'm here to read a statement on behalf of Americans for Safe Access, Cures Not Wars, and the July 4th Hemp Coalition about Eric Holder, who's about to become Attorney General of the United States. This is his office. It's the last couple days he's a private citizen. Soon he will be a government official again. He was Associate Attorney General under Bill Clinton for the last 2 years. As such, he had a rather hard line on medical marijuana and marijuana in general. He asked for stiffer penalties for marijuana in the District of Columbia. I'm here to read this statement on behalf of the coalition. We don't have a problem with the Mark Rich pardon. Mark Rich is one of the people whose picture is on these signs. He's one of the people who says pardon. These signs have two kinds of people: medical marijuana martyrs and people who got pardons because they were top Republican operatives, and top Republican operatives always get pardons. We have no problem with the Mark Rich pardon. Mark Rich was the victim of political grandstanding and overzealous prosecution by Rudy Giuliani. No surprise there. But Eric Holder has a unique chance to clean up his checkered past on the marijuana issue with a raft of new recommendations for clemency. In the spirit of forgiveness, how about full presidential pardons for medical marijuana in California and other states where it's legal? No medical marijuana patient or provider ever tortured, engaged in illegal wiretaps, or waged gratuitous wars of aggression. None of them fraudulently took a $100 million bonus as their bank went bust. Not one of them even sold a phony mortgage with the explicit purpose of cheating old folks on their
This
home.
is really explicitly about the mortgage crisis. Same thing Bernie Sanders said. You can't have a war on pot when these guys who pulled a mortgage thing go free. It's just wrong.
Vigorous enforcement of the law against people who got us into this mess. We want full medical marijuana amnesty for everyone prosecuted under Bush, or a guilty Republican politician as a cellmate for every pot prisoner in America. For those in pain, medical marijuana!
So anyway, that actually, if you can think of that as the first Occupy Wall Street demonstration with a marijuana twist. Because we really were, saying we want people to go to jail for financial crimes. And, did they? No. Do you guys ever see The Big Short? Yep. There was never, never anything. So always like make an issue of that. Now, I'm going to play this because this just, after years of crying in the wilderness, I get out of jail. I get busted. This is what happened after the stupid bust in Mattoon. I get busted for pot in Nebraska. 150 pounds. And it's getting further and further away from any, thing of being able to keep the Yippee Museum. And that night, they were really, people didn't want to listen to me in the jail because I would just talk about Ibogaine. But they would always watch this show. So this was very interesting. Oops. Here we go. This is actually pretty accurate.
In the criminal justice system, sexually based offenses are
amazingly
considered especially heinous. In New York City,
except that
dedicated detectives who
this
investigate
amount of
these
Ibogaine,
vicious
you have to
felonies
use
are
purified
members of an
total
elite
alkaloid
squad
instead
known
of
as the Special
Ibogaine.
Victims Unit. These are their stories.
We never expected this to be on television. This has now been on television 20
Dr.
times. They
Wong.
keep showing it over and over again.
How are you doing?
What does it look like?
You're in withdrawal.
You gotta get me something.
The only thing I can do is take you to the hospital.
No! Where's Martin?
Is Gold supplying you?
Can't you see I'm sick? You're a doctor, help me!
I can get you into rehab after we go to the hospital.
You don't give a damn about me. No one does. Not my parents, not those cops, only Martin. Where is Martin?
You're not going back to ASP.
Look, please. Just tonight. I promise I'll do whatever you want. Please. I hurt bad. You gotta help me.
It's okay, Enzo. We're gonna do the best thing for you. We're gonna stop Martin Gold.
You want me to prosecute Gold on rape charges and as an accessory to the Dunn girls' murder?
Gold pushed AJ to seek out strangers for sex. His paw prints are all over that Craigslist ad.
Actual paw prints?
The guy's got a face hold on these kids. Conquer your fears or embrace me. What the hell is that?
A nauseating homily, but one that can't tag Gold with accessory.
He also raped AJ.
You can't prove statutory without her.
Alex, he's treating girls as young as 14 years of age. If we don't charge him, then he's going to be back with his teen harem in the next few hours.
Even if we do move forward with the charges, bail is a no-brainer. Gold's been filing his taxes from the same address for the last 12 years. He fought in Desert Storm. He's squeaky clean. Did you interview the other kids?
Yeah, none of the parents will cooperate, and they're all so far possessed.
I don't think your raid on family night made you any friends.
We have an eyewitness to the statutory rape.
Is the kid willing?
Absolutely.
Then where is he?
Have you seen Enzo?
Check the can. Please. Please, I need a fix.
Looks like your case just went down the toilet.
There are two kinds of parents, those who will do anything for their children and those who will pay any amount to have someone else do it for them. I read Enzo's file. His parents are art dealers. They spend most of their time in Europe. They paid more than $1 million to park Enzo at ASP.
What do we do?
Send him to rehab. It's methadone now, or it's back to heroin.
If I were in his shoes, I'd probably get high too.
He doesn't want to get high. He wants to avoid the pain of withdrawal. If he doesn't make it through rehab, he'll just go back to heroin and keep using it until it kills him.
So methadone's his only option?
There is one other option, ibogaine hydrochloride. It's been remarkably successful in treating opiate addiction. Within 24 hours, he'd lose his craving for heroin without any withdrawals.
So what's the catch? Crazy side effects?
The risks are minimal. Fewer die from ibogaine than methadone. Clinics around the world use it to treat heroin addiction. Imagine no more ODs. No more HIV from dirty needles.
So, let's do it.
I can't. The drug is illegal here.
It can cure heroin addiction in 24 hours, and it's illegal.
Because the patent expired, no drug companies can make a profit off it. No one will pay for ibogaine to go through FDA trials.
The pharmaceutical industry can make more money treating addicts with less effective drugs. What a bunch of crap.
Oh, speaking of that, look what just walked in.
You know, this is what I call real dedication. You're released from the can, you don't shower and shave, and you come right here.
What are you doing here?
I've come to take Enzo back to ASP.
You're not taking that boy anywhere.
When Enzo's parents enrolled him, they made me his legal guardian, and as his guardian, I know what's best for him.
What's best for him is real rehab, not your narcissistic schemes.
Don't worry, Dr. Wong. He'll get all the TLC he needs. Now, as his guardian, I will ask you to leave.
Look at him. That quack is putting on quite a show. As if he really cares about him.
Enzo is his stay-out-of-jail card. I wouldn't be surprised if Gold kept him high. Anything to keep him from testifying.
What do you think the chances are of him getting clean?
With Gold playing the puppet master, slim to none. Unless someone cuts the strings.
Doc, what's up?
Enzo, you're coming with me.
Martin cool with that?
Absolutely.
What you're doing is illegal.
Stay out of this, Liv, for your own sake.
Ibogaine hasn't been approved.
Because the drug companies don't want it approved. 1 dose of Ibogaine and he's clean. We're leaving.
It's kidnapping. It's conspiracy to provide a controlled substance to a minor.
He's sick. I'm a doctor. I have a moral obligation to treat him.
You're an FBI agent who's breaking the law. I took an oath.
First, do no harm. That is the oath I took as a doctor, and that is what I live by.
Even if it means losing your license.
What kind of doctor am I if I don't help save this kid's life?
I'm going to give you 750 milligrams of ibogaine hydrochloride.
More needles?
No needles. Capsule. About 20 minutes after you swallow it, you're going to start to feel a warm tingle in the back of your neck.
Purified total alcohol.
It's going to be followed by a feeling of euphoria.
Take 1.4 grams.
Now, for about 8 hours, you're going to trip.
Almost twice as much.
Waking dreams, hallucinations, body rushes, the works.
What if I freak out?
I've done 300 of these procedures. No one's ever been eaten by a T-Rex.
Alberto's a licensed physician. You'll be fine.
What if it doesn't work?
91% of the time, it does.
With my luck, I'll be that other 9%.
3 years ago, I took that same gamble. Won my life back. Clean ever since.
You ready?
I'm scared.
Life on the other side of this is gonna be a much brighter picture.
Bottoms up.
How will we know if it's worked?
Enzo will have lost his craving. He'll be clear-headed, and they will testify.
And if it doesn't work, he'll go back to ASP.
Please let me come back. I'll never leave again. I won't. They fooled me. I trusted them.
Broke your promise. You said you'd stay at the apartment.
I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. Please help me.
You fled from your fears instead of embracing them.
Martin, you gotta forgive me.
Come here. You're home now.
Please, I'm hurt all over.
I know you weren't ready.
I gotta get straight.
I'll take care of you, Enzo. I always have. And this is gonna make you feel better.
Martin Gold, you're under arrest for possession and distribution of narcotics.
Pulls out the wire.
And
He's
accessory to
wearing the
murder.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of
Whatever
law.
they did won't cure you. You will use again.
Yeah, you better hope it's before I testify.
You have no understanding of what I do here. I'm helping kids when no one else will.
You're helping them stay high, dependent, and screwed up so you can make money off their misery.
You're a screw-up, Enzo. Pathetic loser. You'll come crawling back, you Judas.
I'm clean, Martin. You can rot in jail.
You give him Ibogaine, you'll lose your license. I'm reporting you.
I already reported myself. 30-day suspension of my license. It was worth it.
So in 2011, right, which is really when the next picture was taken, Dimitri Mugianis and two of his buddies were busted in Seattle for going to a hotel room to give a woman Ibogaine. And she was, they were set up. They get to the federal court, because it was the feds, it was DEA. And the judge says, having found out all about Ibogaine, if I could give you no time, I would, but I have to give you something. So I'm giving you 45 days home confinement on a bracelet. They were supposed to get at least a year in penitentiary. So it's kind of hard to be against a cure for heroin right now. We have, a heroin crisis. And the DEA is no longer able to say that we have to spend 90% of our resources on marijuana. I know that you saw Steve Cohn, the U.S. representative from Memphis, tearing this DEA guy a new asshole. When he says nobody is overdosing from marijuana. I know people in my family who know people who have overdosed. And he just it's no longer a tenable position. But the problem is, these guys here, this is actually, you see, the other lady there is named, what's her name? She's Trotsky's granddaughter, believe it or not. Nora Volkow, right. That's Nora Volkow there, and she did allow the expenditure of $6.2 million on a synthetic Ibogaine called 18MC. So if you, what happened was I had met somebody back in '98 named Don Vereen. And Don Vereen was Ben Vereen's brother, or cousin. Ben Vereen. So there was a guy named Don Vereen. He's a very nice, well-spoken gay black man who was the assistant to the head of NIDA at the time. And he gets on the talent search committee for Obama to pick new people at NIDA. And I put him in touch with Ken Alper, who's the big, 18MC doc, Ibogaine doc from New York City. And Alper recommends a guy named, what's his name, man? I'm blanking because I didn't get enough sleep. Well, anyway, this fellow, who's another NYU doc, becomes the head of medications development. And they, once again, they're willing to spend money, but not on Ibogaine, which we know is effective and which comes from plants. And it's really kind of hard for them to shut down on a worldwide basis because anybody can get their hands on the root bark and make Ibogaine. So they're they really have a problem, right? Imagine a cocaine, right, that you could use to get people off drugs, right? In other words, something comes from a plant that you can just make. You don't need to have a complicated synthesis. You don't need a big chemical plant to make this. It's pretty basic. And it works actually better than the synthetic. So how do you stop people from just getting this stuff and getting off drugs worldwide? It's going to happen spontaneously. It's going to either be a shorter amount of time or a longer amount of time. Well, this gives you an idea of what we're up against here with Patrick Kennedy. And this is the problem.
I'm so curious to read about your other program, which is about marijuana. And where is it? I swear I'm not pulling this out of my ass. I say, it's called, what is your group? It's
Smart
called
Alternatives.
Smart Alternatives. But I'm sorry, I don't think they're smart. And when I read you said marijuana destroys the brain and expedites psychosis. I mean, it sounds like you've been hanging around with Nancy Reagan in 1983.
Yeah. Well, you know, I used to have your position, Bill. I used to think marijuana was no big deal. Everyone in my family had cancer, so I wouldn't begrudge them using marijuana to mitigate the effects of chemotherapy. But then I learned about the truth of this. And I learned about the fact that if you give a permissive environment, you're going to have more kids use.
Oh, come on.
And, well, here's...
Man, come on, man.
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
This is like global warming denying. This is the kind of stuff we heard years and years ago.
Well, we learned with the tobacco companies, Bill, that they targeted kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what makes us think that the new tobacco companies, those that are going to have a commercial interest in a profit from marijuana, aren't going to want to get new customers?
But your reasoning is adults shouldn't do things because kids might. Adults shouldn't have fire or drive cars under that reasoning, too. Kids might do all sorts of bad things. Parents have to stop them, and teachers have to stop them. And we made laws that said tobacco companies couldn't target them. I mean, it just seems so un-Kennedy-like to be against what I said a couple of weeks ago was the new gay marriage. It is the next civil rights movement, is to get equality under the law for people who want, and I mean, you've had your drug problems, and I'm not telling tales out of school. I mean, you had problems with prescription drugs, Ambien, and I forget the other one that made you drive.
You know, it doesn't matter what drugs you take. If you're taking drugs...
It does matter, because drugs are different.
Okay, so let me just say, on the marijuana thing, I care about your brain. Right? So when the statistics show that moderate use of marijuana reduces your IQ, well, I guess...
I mean, I'm reading from the Institutes of Medicine, which is the branch of the National Academy of Sciences that advises Congress. They've studied this. Psychology Today did an article recently. They said it's less addictive than any other drug we have: cocaine, heroin, alcohol. The studies came out recently that said if you smoke marijuana, you have less risk of lung, neck, or head cancer. It's not linked to lung cancer, liver cancer, or crime, as so many other drugs are.
So I led the effort in Congress for drug courts, because I don't believe people ought to be incarcerated because of an addiction. And I think that's a problem we have. But I also serve on the board of the National Institutes of Drug Abuse. Now, people can go online and check what the NIDA, the NIH-funded research shows. And the NIDA research shows that if you allow this sense of there's no harm in using it, more people will use. That's a fact. If you reduce the cost, which will be the case, more people will use. These are the statistics, Bill. I don't want to put out something that you can contest. The bottom line is, all I want is the people to know the truth.
But you want marijuana users to go into rehab. You want to overload a system where there are people who really...
Bill.
Well, that's what I've read.
No. Okay.
You don't want that. So
I just want, first of all, I want, so that we can have an honest discussion about this, I want the facts out. So I want the public to know what the truth is about this. And I think if they knew the facts, and we don't have time tonight to go through all the facts, I think they'd be alarmed.
Tell me the facts.
Okay, the facts are, if you legalize, there's going to be greater use. That's a fact. Public health indicators tell us that. So,
okay, but you still haven't proved to me why that's a bad thing.
The bad thing, okay. Well, if we care...
I would agree with you. Children should not do it.
Okay, so that's the bottom line. So more kids will use, and the bottom line is we know with a developing brain, if kids think there's no big deal with this thing and more of them use, it's going to impact their developing brain. The bottom line is if we care about kids' healthy development, why do we want to add a new drug? Like, I mean, the point is that...
It's hardly a new drug.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
But, you know,
a new legalized drug that has commercial power to market. That's my problem.
Here's what I worry about. Bain Capital, we all know that, Mitt Romney's whole group, in 2006 spent $723 million to buy a group called CRC Health Group. They open rehab clinics. It's money. The more people we put into rehab for reasons that they don't belong there, the more money for people. I assume these people smell money there for a reason. It's the same reason we have too many people in prison, because we're making customers out of people who should not be customers.
Well, you know what?
And should not be making money for people.
So what I'd
love
you to do a show is talking about the for-profit prison industry. Because they're the ones that, I know, pushing the 3 strikes and you're out stuff.
Right.
Okay? That's where we could deal with the criminalization part of it and not have people sit in jail that are only there because they're suffering from a conviction that they shouldn't be suffering from. But on the public health stuff, don't take my word for it. Talk to Nora Volkow. Invite her on. She's the director of the National Institute of Drug Abuse.
Okay.
And have her speak about it. It's very compelling to me. I didn't make up this position because I wanted to think that I was going to be a good liberal and be against, you know, the legalization of marijuana. That was inconsistent with my original thinking. When I learned more of the facts, I changed my views on this. And I think that if most people saw more of the facts, they might, like you, might change your mind.
So anyway, you know, you can't really keep both positions in the same tent. So a bunch of people went off and voted for Gary Johnson. And, you know, I guess Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton haven't changed their position, and they would rather lose the election than legalize pot. Here's the CARES Act. This has now been replaced because the man on the left has got a descheduling act. And we're trying to get through to him to talk to him about some other issues. But descheduling is much better than the CARES Act, because you just take marijuana out of the schedule, then it's up to the states how it's regulated. The only problem is the single convention supposedly obligates us to keep it Schedule 2. And this is Steve, after fighting for 8 years, celebrating in front of the federal court. So during the time that we were under Obama, we made more progress than we have under any president. And the one thing that's happening right now is Trump is kind of talking about going back to the Partnership for Drug-Free America and having more ads on television, which we know doesn't work. But he hasn't really pushed the button to crack down on pot the way Bush did. Now, this is kind of amazing because Christie, who ran the Opiate Commission that just finished up, believes in the gateway effect. But the new governor of New Jersey has vowed to legalize pot for recreational for the taxes in the first 100 days. So Christie is on his way out. And finally, Roger Stone is going around to all the marijuana trade shows, or he was until he was banned after Charlottesville, giving speeches in favor of legalization, in favor of, back Trump, become part of the Trump team, and you will keep pot from being re-prohibited, right? And the interesting thing is he would not take the information about Ibogaine to the president. But, there's already been ads in the back, whole full-page ads in the back of the Saturday New York Times by people bringing Ibogaine to his attention. So I'm sure that he knows about it. And what Roger told me was, that was before he refused to talk to me any further, was that in our talking points, we were told not to discuss this talking point. That's it. So he just won't discuss it. And everywhere else, people are saying, if you had a heroin crisis and you had something that would end the heroin crisis, it would give enormous credibility and leverage to whatever movement brings something like Ibogaine to the attention of the American people. So Jack used to say, don't talk to me about Ibogaine. Don't let Dana, change the subject about it. But now things have changed a little bit. We got kratom. Kratom, of course, is another detox. It's a plant detox. It's not as effective for detox, but you can use it if you have chronic pain and not get super strung out. And if you add the three things, ibogaine, cannabis, and kratom, what you have are the best, like, unconventional detoxes. And the problem with methadone and Suboxone, the conventional detoxes, is that they're not detoxes. They're maintenance drugs. So when you take them and you try to wean yourself off, it's not particularly effective, and you're likely to wind up addicted to something that's much more addictive than heroin, because both methadone and Suboxone are much more difficult to kick than heroin. So I know that you don't want to be thought to be responsible in any way for the opiate crisis. It's not fair for them to say, if we would just magically get rid of every marijuana plant worldwide, cocaine and heroin and methamphetamine would go poof. It would just disappear, right? We saw what happened under Ronald Reagan. They got rid of the pot. I remember they would get rid of pot every summer. And what would happen is when people would go to their dealer and they couldn't get pot, and he said, but I have some coke you can sell. So for economic reasons, people started dealing cocaine a lot because they needed to live. And you couldn't get pot for like 3 or 4 months, period. So right now in the Philippines, we're advocating the Uruguayan system. Besides, a cure for methamphetamine, which ibogaine is, we're advocating severing the link between pot and the black market by selling it in pharmacies. And they sell it for $1.30 a gram for really, really good pot in pharmacies in Uruguay. And look, I'm telling you, I smoked the pot over there. And if you had good pot, like you would have in the pharmacies, all the pot in the Philippines is kind of moldy just because of the climate. It's very humid, so it's all brown. And it's kind of good. I mean, it's better than nothing. But the problem is, a lot of times the people who sell it are also selling shabu. So you're going to get turned on to shabu if you just go to the black market. And the best thing they could do, just to end the shabu, right, to end the methadone or the methamphetamine problem they have, is to legalize pot and sell it, separate, sell it over the counter, separate it from hard drugs, and the only way to do that is to legalize it. So the solution as to the problem of other drugs, well, I don't really think that mushrooms are a problem. And that's the other thing they do. The people that I was with, besides pot, they do mushrooms. So they're not doing shabu. Because potheads are smart enough to know that methamphetamine is a really sucky drug. Just horrible, So anyway, I guess I'm done. What happened to the joint? What happened to the joint? What happened to the joint?